small introduction for the ones who don't know me. I'm Ardon Toonstra. I work at FHIR as a FHIR consultant, mainly specialized in FHIR profiling. And one of my big assignments is at Nictiz, where I created or helped with everything with FHIR and created the Dutch profiles. Our agenda for this session is we're going to do a very brief recap of our Dutch profiles and information standards. I will talk about our qualification and test environment. Maybe I will show the exercise, and then we can go step by step. And you can actually go in and use our qualification environment to see how it works. And if you have your own client or your own server, this exercise will be more, even better. But if not, you can also use a HTTP client or like Postman or Fiddler to go through the exercise. So our profiles, currently we have 106 of them published on Simplifier, and all those profiles are in use in one of the information standards, which you as a vendor can implement. And to access, for example, in the Netherlands we've got the MedMij program, which is the Dutch PHR program that uses a lot of information standards. And before you can exchange information on that network, you need to be tested and qualified by Nictiz. So you need to get a certification that you actually implemented the information standard correctly. And the profiles are a very big part of that, because we use them for validating the actual messages your system sends or receives. We version our profiles with the use of a package mechanism, which versions the profiles. The session after this session will go about the whole package mechanisms, and we will have a Let's Build session on interacting with a package. But for now, in our testing environment on our server, we implemented the latest package version that is available with all our profiles. Well, here you see an overview of the information standards that are in use by MedMij today. So these are the standards where you can implement and can qualify for. And we're gonna have a look at self-measurements. So we're focusing at self-measurements. So how does it look like, the whole qualification aspect within MedMij? Well, qualification, you implement a certain part of the information standard, because the information standard is about as well as the client as the server. So if you are a client, you will qualify for a certain system role, which is defined in the functional design page of the information standard. And that system role always consists of one transaction, which is either a request or a serve, or a send and receive. And for the BGZ, which is the Dutch patient summary, for example, you have as a client the use case retrieve your patient summary, but the actual transactions are 28 requests that need to be performed to get all of the information. But it's part of one system role where you can qualify for. And a system role looks like this here on the slide. So on the left side, you have the information standard identifier with its version. Here we're talking about medication process, version 9.07. And if you want to qualify, you qualify here for the request of a medication overview in the Exchange Standard FHIR. So this, once you go through the qualification process and Nictiz confirms that you're implemented information standard correctly, you will be assigned this system role in the network, which allows to actually exchange data. So this is for request. On the other hand, if you are a server, you will need to serve the medication overview, and then the example system role looks a little bit different, because this will be a B. So for example, if you look at measurements, we have 4 different system roles that have 4 different transactions. We have 2 actors, namely the personal health record system or the EHR system. This is the Dutch abbreviation for it. And in total, the whole self-measurements information standard covers 8 direct healthcare information models. In our implementation guide on the wiki pages of Nictiz, we describe how you can perform all those requests belonging to a certain transaction, and we list where you can find the appropriate, or we list all the relevant profiles belonging to those healthcare information models that are used in the information standard. Well, we have Touchstone as our testing environment, and we have an instance of the FHIR server. This is our resource server that has all of our example data in it. And Touchstone is used to actually perform all the tests and validation to see if you are doing it correctly. Besides that, we have functional testing scenarios written down in PDF documents, which can be found on the wiki pages. Here on the right side, you see an overview of all the functional test scenarios we defined. So here's just written down like what's expected, what you should do, and which test data you should use. In the addenda, for example, we gave a whole functional data set. So if you are a EHR system that needs to expose the patient summary, you will need to use the BGZ qualification test script for exposing the patient summary. And with it, you have an addenda which contains all the functional data. We give it to the EHR. They need to type in or get all that information inside of their systems. Then we use Touchstone. Then the EHR needs to go to Touchstone and fire the test script. So Touchstone will act as a client and request the patient summary, and your system, like the EHR system, needs to expose it, and Touchstone will validate the request it gets, or the data it gets. And afterwards, to go to fulify the qualification process, the EHR vendor also needs to make screen pictures of the data, how it is represented in their EHR system. So we can match that against the data we get to see if it is being implemented correctly, as an example. So here in the functional test script scenarios, we define the test script scenarios, and they have a representing test script, or they have a test script that represents those test scenarios, which can be found in Touchstone, which we call the technical test scripts. And we will get into this. So we made for the exercise, we made the self-measurement test scripts available for use, which we're going to use in a bit. So let's zoom in again at the test scenario again. So if we are testing a PHR system, Touchstone will be used to be sitting in the middle and capture all the requests a PHR client makes, and you will direct all the requests to our FHIR server that contains all the resource data, or all the FHIR data. So on the right side, we entered all our, in this case, we have the FHIR data in control, and we entered it in the FHIR server. So the PHR will request it, and FHIR will serve the information, and we will not necessarily need to check the FHIR data because we created it ourselves, and it's already compliant to our information standards. But then we will mainly focus on assessing if the EHR client, the PHR client, performs the right requests. So in every test script, a certain request is expected, and we're validating if the actual performed request matches that is with the request that is defined in the test script. On the other hand, if a PHR system needs to send data, for example, I want to send my self-measurements to a healthcare record, we are looking at how the data is structured or generated by the PHR, and we will validate it against our profiles. And that all happens in Touchstone. And again, this is based on our package, which we publish through Simplifier. If we are assessing EHR server, Touchstone will become the client and the test tool. So as a server, you will go into Touchstone, you will fire those test scripts at your own server. Touchstone acts as a client, and Touchstone will look at the response you give and validate your response against our profiles. Are there any questions on Touchstone Wildfire so far? No? It's clear? Okay, so here we see Touchstone in the UI of Touchstone. And this is actually also the test scripts that is available for our exercise. On the left side, you've got the test definitions, where you see under Aegis, we have now a folder named Nictiz demo, which contains our self-measurements test scripts. And we got them for the PHR testing and for XIS testing. Well, here you can select all the test scripts you want to perform. So you can select all of the test scripts, for example, that are in the PHR folder, and you can create a test setup. And with the free plan of Touchstone, you're allowed to do 5 test setups per day. So you can do unlimited test scripts, but you can only create 5 test setups with your free account. So we need to keep that in mind when we're going through the exercise. But selecting all those test scripts and creating on the test setup button will get you to the test setup menu. There you can can put in some variables if needed, and you can also select which server you want to use to do your testing on. And once you're executed the test script and performed the desired requests or responses, you will see here an overview of if your test succeeded. So this is our Wildfire server. We've got actually 2 instances. We got one for development purposes and one for use in qualification. This is the URL for our development server. Well, we'll get to that later. So besides using Touchstone, you can also use the Wildfire server on its own, or you can use any other Fire server that's out there. You just need to spin it up, load our conformance resources in it, and also test data, and you can test locally or with a public reference server out there. Or if you don't, before that, you can also use local validators or other validators that are available to test your output. A nice thing to mention is the yellow button, which makes it really easy to spin up your own server. For example, if you go to the Nictiz project that contains all our Dutch profiles, you can click on download and you can run the whole project as a FHIR server. And once you click on that, it will open up the yellow button, and you can download a Docker image containing our Vonk FHIR server. And once you run it, it will contain all of the conformance resources that are in that Simplifier project, and also all the example data will be inside the FHIR server. So if you're familiar with Docker, you can get this up and running in like 2 minutes. That's a nice feature to just test without Touchstone and Wildfire. I do have to say that this Vonk server does not support all MedMy operations, because for MedMy we also have a couple of very special, not very special things like the last N operation, which Wildfire does support, but Vonk does not yet support that. So in the end, Wildfire can be seen as the golden standard for testing against our Dutch profiles. So we're here for the Let's Build session, and we got 3 different flavors. We can do the PHR testing scripts in Touchstone, which we'll probably do. If someone has its own FHIR server here, you can, if it's accessible through the internet, you can hook it up on Touchstone and test your own FHIR server. I'm just wondering, are there people here with their own server? Is it also accessible? So you could do this. So you've got your own test server, kind of, yeah. Okay, well, I think we will focus on the client testing Touchstone exercise. So I would yeah. Oh no, sorry. It should be a dash 2019. So maybe it would be wise to get this exercise. Please go to devdays.com and then Amsterdam, and then you will see the exercise tab, where you can find the PDF with the Let's Build test exercise. So, okay. So you can go to DevDays, the About event. Here we have the tab Exercises, and there. Let's see. Which one? Oh. I think Marida has overridden my exercise with a different one. No! That's unfortunate. Okay, so I just figured out that I asked Marita to upload something else, but see, now we have like two package things. Let's see if this is the correct one. No. Okay, I think I'll just go step by step through the exercise instead of the document. Let's see if I can open it for myself here. Oh. Because the first part in this exercise will be to create an account on Touchstone. So first of all, we could all go to Touchstone, which is touchstone.com, and you will be redirected to this page. So who of you already has a Touchstone account? So, Michael? Yeah. Okay. So for the ones who haven't, we can create a Touchstone account here by signing up. Okay. So once you have your account, the next step will be to create an organization, because Touchstone requires you to have an organization. And after that, we're going to create the test. You're going to create a test system, which will be your client. And once we're there, we will discuss the configurations you will need to set up. So who of you already has its account? Yeah. Okay. Sorry? Okay, I will wait a minute. Ja, wat nu? Ja, wat zou een goede manier zijn? Oh yeah, I will definitely distribute this document, but what would be a good way to do it now? No. Okay. So Do we already have an organization? You already set yourself up?
Doesn't matter what you put in there, right?
No, just yeah. I think Touchstone.
My name, my organization.
Yeah, we'll do something like that. It doesn't matter, really matter, but I do know that if you put in test, that Touchstone doesn't accept test in the organization name. So they try to keep their data clean, but I would just I don't know, maybe put your name or DevDays demo or I don't know.
They will delete it afterwards.
No, I think they won't. So you could delete it afterwards. Let's have this. This is I think the hardest part. So once you've got an organization created, you've got your account and organization, we need to create your test system. So you need to register your test system. If you have a real one, I would suggest to add your own client. But if you haven't, we're going to fill it out with also default example values. And all those arrows are the important parts. So here we need to have a name and a base URL for your test system. We're not going to do anything with it. Yeah, we're not going to actually use it, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm not sure, but I think Touchstone requires an IP address. I'd first try out to just leave it be, just without, but if it complains about an IP, we can use a random IP generator, because Touchstone only accepts one IP address per organization. So if it's, well, the DevDays IP address is already in use. So first try it without the IP address, and if it doesn't work, we go Google random IP generator and fill out a random IP address. Two other important...
So Touchstone has got an assumption that the FHIR server you're testing exists on only one IP address.
No, you can add more. Okay, this is now, you can add more. So for... Yeah, but well, for now, it's very important to uncheck this thing, because otherwise it will also do a check on IP request that it matches. So it's for security reasons, but now we're just going to leave it out. So we also need to uncheck this box, so Touchstone will not complain when we perform the test execution. But if you're setting up your own test system, you don't want to maybe expose your server to other people, so you can use also the IP as a security measure, so that only people that are on the same IP can test against it. But for now, try to keep it up. Click here, FHIR client, and uncheck this box. Oh, yeah. So if you have an organization already, that's the first part. I will sign in as well. So on the top, you have a menu over here, and it says test system. And if you go to new test system, no? But you have an organization, right?
Yeah, but I enrolled the resort in my organization. So it was already there, so maybe that's why.
That's probably why. So in this test demo, if we're going to do this demo, probably you can create another account on your own email address and become like the member of your organization, or so you need to create your own organization to actually enter a test system. Do other people have difficulties with this? You were able to create a test system? No, I think you can't leave it empty because there's a red dot here, so you can fill in an example. Can I zoom in a bit? And this checkbox is important. Well, you can, I'm not sure what they exactly mean with profiles, but here you can select if your test system is a client or a server, and I think in some theoretical cases you can be a client and a server. But for now, I think if you're entering your test system, if you're registering your own server, you would go for the FHIR server.
The base URL
yeah, just
www example of that.
yeah. Hopefully, maybe I'm not sure if it checks if if it should be unique, but oh, it does. Okay, so you need to fill out something specific. Touchstone makes it hard for us for demoing purposes. But after this whole registration process comes the actual fun stuff.
We have to select the 301.
Yeah, sorry, that I forgot to mention. Our test scripts are based on FHIR STU3. So here at the specification, you need to. By default, it's 401, I believe, or 402, 401. And we need to select it on 403, 304, 301. What the fuck? Sorry. So, heb je er wat opgezet? Michael, do you have an organization and a test system yet? You as well?
Yeah, I have a test system.
Cool. You're already ready with the test system? George? Yeah. Great. For you as well?
I'm sort of getting there slowly.
Okay. We can wait. Okay. What's my time? Okay. Can I move forward? Zoom in again. Let's check the time. Okay, we're gonna moving forward because we only have 10 minutes. Otherwise, we don't get to the fun stuff. So once you have your test system registered, you can go to Touchstone and find our test scripts here at the test definitions. So you could navigate to the FHIR sandbox, to Aegis, then you will find the Nictiz demo folder with the self-measurements in it. Well, we created our client system, so we're gonna go for these test scripts. Well, let's start out with just the retrieve test scripts we made available, because we don't have time to do the actual creating an own self-measurements and sending it to the server, so we will just request them. Well, we can select 3 of them, for example. And then you can hit the create test setup. So here, this is going to be important, because here at the origin, you need to select your own test system, because you're going to perform the request that is expected. So instead of Touchstone being the client, you will find your own test script, your own test system here. I will now choose for Nictiz internal. And the destination server needs to be the Nictiz Wildfire server with dev behind it. And afterwards, you can press execute. And now Touchstone is waiting on your request. So it's actually waiting for the first test script. It has the status waiting for request. And if you hit the test script link, you will open this specific test. And you will see what Touchstone is actually expecting. So it's expecting a get with the following URL, where you can see that we are actually querying an observation with a loin code that represents a blood pressure. And it expects at least 2 headers, namely the application. Oh no, you could enter this, it doesn't really matter. But it does. You should also enter an authorization header with the patient token to access this patient. Normally I would have listed all the authorization headers in the in the document, but you can also find it below where you can see the patient token fixture here, and once you press resolved, you can find the authorization token you can use in the authorization header, or the bearer token you can use in the authorization header. So this is what Touchstone expects, and now you're gonna, normally if you have your own PHR, you will do this request within the PHR, but I expect nobody here has like a whole client already. So you can use Postman or any other HTTP tool. I always use Postman, which is loading up right now. I do know. So I prepared some requests already. So once you've done the test setup, you can go to your Postman and you can actually type in the request that is expected, which I already did. So you can copy this URL in the request header, which I've done over here. You can set it to, we're performing a get operation. And at the headers, you can enter in the authorization with the patient token. And I can just fire this away. I get a 200 back. So this is actually a request that goes through Touchstone to Wildfire, and it returns me 2 observations that represent a blood pressure. And now Touchstone has matched this request and performed validation against it. So if I refresh this, I will see results. But I already know this result went wrong because I will get a complaint about my IP address, which we see over here, because I haven't entered this IP address in my Nictiz internal system, so I will perform that afterwards. But still, Touchstone went on with actually testing if my request was okay, and it performed certain asserts to see that my HTTP request was a get one, was based on get, that it contained an observation, that it contained this code I asked. We're checking for the authorization header if that's correct. And this is how we check if PHR vendors comply to our standards.
Could you repeat for the authorization, you have this $sign thing?
Yeah.
Can I just put that directly?
No, you cannot. No, you cannot use the $sign.
No, indeed.
Because that's something Touchstone specific. So this is our variable. But at the bottom, you can see the variables that's being used. Here, patient 1, and I'm going to zoom in a bit. You see here fixtures, the token picture, the token fixture. And if you click on resolved or raw, it will open up the patient, and it contains the authorization header. You will need this, otherwise you will get a non-authorized from the server.
That can go with the header, including the bearer.
Including the bearer. Or without the bearer, but then you need to put it here at authorization, and then you can say out. But I always use the header and include the bearer with it.
Could you maybe show me the logging from Touchstone that you opened? Why did you saw the logging?
You mean the patient?
No, here from this request you showed something.
The previous execution. I mean this one that failed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, understand.
So if I want to do it correctly, I need to go to my system, because in our test system we didn't uncheck that box where IP address is matched. So you can have a look at our systems, click on it, and I can add let's execute one again. Internal. So now I did it again. I will perform this request again. See what Touchstone thinks of it now. And now it says my request was okay because it doesn't have that IP address complaint anymore. And here you on the right side, on the details, you can see exactly what was performed with the HTTP request. Again, I can also see that I use Postman, for example, as a user agent. Postman does that, add that to the request headers. So, who of you already performed the test script execution? Did you manage? Yeah? Michael as well?
Yes, I made it wrong. I had the wrong endpoint in it, so it horribly failed.
Oei. For you as well?
It failed because I skipped the IP entry.
Yeah.
And,
So you can go to your own.
test environment, but then when I ran the test, it complained that there was no IP address.
So I think you can go back to your test system and uncheck that box. So this is our qualification environment, which can be used by vendors. If you want to access all of our test scripts, you need to contact with Nictiz, and you can get, you can register your test system, your real one, and go through all the test scripts we have. Well, these were actually pretty simple ones, I think, for a PHR to perform the request. But once your PHR system or HR system needs to generate FHIR data, it's getting more interest, because then we're actually performing requests on how the FHIR instances look like. So for now, we're only testing if all the request headers are properly formed and compliant to the our information standard and FHIR.
So we tested as a kind of a fake client whether or not we made a proper request to this NIC.
To the wildfire server. Exactly. So now we use Postman as our client, but normally you would have your code, or in your code you will need to assemble these requests, and you can.
Postman is not requesting anything; it's requesting something else to run a test, right? To execute that.
Well.
Or how should I see it? I think Touchstone acts as a proxy in the middle.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it checked it and then reports it on. So my Postman just fires Touchstone to do something, and that will do the actual request to the.
Well. No. The Postman actually does the request. It performs the whole, and Touchstone actually just puts it on. But where Touchstone is in the middle here, and that's also the reason why if you go to the expected. If you have a closer look at the URL, you can see that Touchstone actually adds some stuff to it to become the proxy. Well, you could also access our wildfire server directly, and you also get stuff back.
When you've got the tests in Touchstone, is it possible to take those out as computable resources?
They are. So that's very funny. Touchstone, the test scripts itself are FHIR test script resources. So if you click on it here, the link here, test script will show the test script resource as we define them, which is a FHIR resource. And here we define all the things we expect and where we test against. And they're all publicly available on our Nictiz GitHub website. So there are a lot of them, and you can also use them to integrate with your system.
Regression testing, you've got new version software.
Yeah, it's very Touchstone is very good.
Environment, and then just use Touchstone for the formal conformance testing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm trying to test my server, but the scripts expect a certain data set to be in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because
where can I get that data set?
that's in the functional test scripts with the addenda, which I showed in the middle of the presentation. So it's on the information and the in the wiki. So that's for if we're going to test the server, we ask them to fill in data and we're going to request that data. And you will find it on the informatiestandard.nictiz.nl for the kwalificatiepagina. So I think I'm running out of time, or we're done? Well, if there are some questions, maybe I can answer one or two, and then... Okay, then I think we can finish off. It was, I hope...
More available to test things like you have Touchstone. Is there, for example, another...
for Touchstone and FHIR, you also have Crucible, which is a kind of similar, like also a testing environment, but that's open source and not as advanced as Touchstone.
Okay.
So I think Touchstone is one of its kind with regards to FHIR at the moment.
Okay.
But you also have Crucible. And you okay. Well, thank you. And the next session will be about packages, if you're interested.